Chaitanya, you know anybody, no?
Not really.
Not really?
Yeah. There are some from Sriram Prabhu's Bhakti Riksha that is only.
So why don't you explain to me who I don't know who's here?
Um,
Just come right, just sitting where you are. Who's who here? Good Chaitanya.
so there are devotees from Chicago.
Those I know.
Okay. So this is the host. He's Sunil Prabhu.
Your name?
Sunil.
Sunil.
Sunil Patel.
Sunil Patel.
Sunil Patel. I heard that name before somewhere.
Possible.
Yeah, some people.
Lot of lot of
Sure,
people.
lots of Sunil Patels. You
Yeah.
should go Google and find lots of Sunil Patels.
Yeah. Thanks for
Okay.
coming here.
And
I know your wife. Who else?
See you here.
Hare Krishna
Hare
Maharaj.
Krishna.
Thank you so much for coming, Maharaj.
I figured out this was your home. You look like you're in charge.
so there is more Mataji from my Bhakti.
Yeah. Okay.
It's Bhargavi and her husband from Sriram Prabhu's Bhakti Riksha.
Okay, there we go. Thank you.
I don't know those.
This is a new people. You just.
You have invited your friends.
Yeah, I invited him just a new devotee. He just started.
Okay.
It's beginning.
And
This is second day for him.
what is your good name?
Nageshwar.
Nageshwar. Okay.
And this is Prabhu Ashweka.
Rajashekar.
Yeah.
Nice name. Rajashekar. Okay.
And he is also good.
Yeah, he is new devotee to the,
He's one of your friends.
he's my friend, yeah.
You have many friends.
I like to be many friends because
Somebody promised they would come and only half have worked. Something like that?
but it makes more friends, more devotees will be later on, so that's why.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Okay.
I have one request. He
I have the questions for this evening. Is that what you're?
oh
You have your request?
no, I'm talking about this.
Your friend?
Yeah, my friend. His wife is over there, and she was recently pregnant, and she need a blessing. Her baby is only couple of months. How many months? 2 months. 2 months. 2 months early. 2 months early, and she's on a box in the hospital.
Are you going to disappear in the middle of the program and heading to the hospital? You hope not.
No.
Hare Krishna.
This is Harana from
Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Okay. So our host and his good wife, I assume that you've come up with these questions, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm scripted for the evening. 5 questions, and they're somewhat related. What is Krishna's purpose to create this universe? If Krishna loves us, of course, that means he may not. If Krishna loves us and wants us to be in Goloka, why did he create the material world? Why I'm still here? All devotees are telling me that Krishna is merciful. Do you have children?
No.
No. You know any that do have children? Yes, Maharaj. I know many that have children. So, Kishori, have you ever heard from your mother or father that there's some things that they would not want you to do? Yes, Maharaj. Does that sound anything like your question? Now, you know Vibhu Chaitanya,
Yes.
and you know his good wife.
Yeah.
Are they going to restrict their daughter from something that is really good for her and really wholesome and joyful and lots of fun, and they just say no? Is that likely to happen?
Possible, yes.
Huh?
Yes.
It's likely to happen?
I mean,
Do you know him?
yeah.
Besides by name, you know him by nature?
Not,
Is he the kind
not
of person?
exactly, because
Okay, I do.
I'm not in.
I do.
Not
And I'll say, he wouldn't do that. You know, wife gets a little wound up sometimes. Kishori's nodding. If there's some do's and do nots from loving parents to their children, it's not overly restrictive or overly demanding. It's just part of parenting. And then it's part of growing up that, you like to do what you want to do. And a little restriction, that's okay. But, freedom is also okay. And so there's that, parent-child relationship that exists. And Krishna's the Aham Bija Pratakpita. He's the seed-giving father of all living entities, including the parents and the child. He's the seed-giving father of all. And the purpose of the creation, because that's, what's Krishna's purpose? He wants us in Goloka. He wants us to be in our loving relationship with him. This is a key part of the answer to your question. For there to be love, there must be volition. There must be free will. Must be. Otherwise, there isn't love. It's that there's only one choice. You must, or else, and there isn't even an or else. Then there's no love. It's not voluntary. So it's voluntary, which means I could say, no, I'm out of here. Or what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Icha dvesa samutena dvandava mohena bharata. All living entities take birth in this material world, overcome by the dualities of Icha and Dvesha. We desire independent enjoyment, and we have Dvesha towards he who is the independent enjoyer. Prabhupada gives the example of someone who sees the king. He's seated on a big throne, and he's always seated on a big throne. Every time I come by, he's on this big throne. I want to sit on that big throne. That's the Icha part. And then there's a problem. There's somebody already seated on that big throne. That's the Dvesha part. So towards Krishna, we have Icha and Dvesha. So if we exercise our volition or our free will in the direction of independent enjoyment, well, there's no such thing. So in order to facilitate the independent enjoyment desire, then illusion is created. That's what this world is. It's the world of illusion. The appearance of things only. Or as Prabhupada describes in the Bhagavatam, where there's no substance, there's only category. There's Sanskrit terminology to go with this, but the material world is a place of illusion. It appears that there's something of substance, that there's happiness. And so we go for it. It's like a mirage in the desert. Looks like water. And when you're in the desert, you want water, so you go for it. But it's always elusive. That happiness is always elusive. It's always another couple of steps and another, do it a little differently and try this and that, put together some other things and didn't work, but I gotta keep trying. And donkey stubborn, trying for that illusory happiness in the world where there's no happiness. Because a desert is a place where there's no water. By definition, that's what a desert is. And by definition, the place where there's no happiness is this place. But it looks like. And so we keep pursuing it. Now, why? So the question is, why make mirages? Why make the material world? Because we desired it. Well, at least we desired happiness separate from Krishna, which doesn't exist. And he's loving. Parents will sometimes give an okay. It's not like, yeah, that's great. If there's something that they're dependent, that son or daughter wish to do, they may try to reason with them and encourage them, and there's something they want to do and they want to do and they want to do it, so they say, okay. That's what Krishna does to create the material world. He's in our heart as Chaita Guru, and he is advising us. And we got something stuck in our ears, beans in our ears, and we can't hear his message. We can't hear his message. He wants us back. And we may say, well, we want that, but what we want is not that. What we want, using Prabhupada's words, we want the kingdom of God without God. We want the position of being independent enjoyers without acknowledging that we're dependent. That's what this world is. And there's unlimited varieties. In terms of species of life, there's 8,400,000 different species of a select one. Try them on, see. Try this one on, try that one on. How does it fit? Does it make you feel comfortable? Does it fulfill your desires for happiness? And then all the varieties of those species. Krishna is merciful. Part of the form of his mercy is he'll say yes even when he wishes no. He doesn't always say no. With the yes, with his creation comes responsibility. We want our independence, and we don't want the misery that comes along with making bad choices. But there's laws of nature. There's you abide by the laws of nature. Dharma rakshata rakshata. You abide by dharma and you're protected by dharma. So that's another platform. Persons may wish to, okay, I'll take my independent enjoyment, but I'll live according to dharma. Well, so you live according to dharma, and then there's a degree of acceptance while I'm still exercising some degree of free will choices. That's not the platform of love. That's the platform of kind of like, I have a contract. I have a license for enjoyment. Lawful enjoyment. And with that lawful enjoyment, there's bondage. Good karma, the inevitable mistakes that we make, errors because we're defective, and so some bad results from that bad action, and the mix of good and bad, and then another birth to get the reaction of that mix of good and bad. Krishna's advice, Abrahma Bhuvana Loka Purnar Avartanorjuna. My dear Arjuna, you should not aspire for any future destination from the highest planets down to the lowest because therein repeated birth and death take place. So as long as even this good karma or mix of good karma, bad karma is another birth, Krishna's advocacy is, his mercifulness is, aspire for that position, attain that position, that you're beyond birth and death. That's what Krishna wants us. But if we say no, and Krishna says, well, please reconsider, we say no. Okay. Jiva, this question number 2. The living entity, the jiva, is part and parcel of Krishna. Does that mean the soul is separate from Krishna? Or not? You put separate head. So the relationship between the soul and Krishna is like the relationship between a spark and the fire from which the spark comes, or a ray of sun from which a ray of sun which comes from the sun, shine, sun glow. But the part unto the whole. Qualitatively, the spark is like the fire. Qualitatively, the drop of ocean water is like the ocean from which it comes. Qualitatively, the soul is like Krishna. Now, specifically, your question, is the soul separate? Well, it's part. The part is of the whole, but you can look at the part and say, I've been studying a very wonderful book called Tattva Sandarbha by Jiva Goswami. And there's one section where it's really interesting. He's saying, I wish to describe Krishna. I wish to describe how the scriptures describe Krishna. To describe Krishna will describe the living entity, because the living entity is easier to understand than Krishna, and the living entity's qualities are derived from Krishna. They're qualitatively the same. So not separate in the sense of like having its existential independence or its ontological independence, a separate entity that has no connection with its source of emanation. Not that kind of separate, but separate in the sense like the spark that's come from the fire can be carried by the air, the wind, and land on the ground over there somewhere and not have the same glowing power as when the spark was dancing in the rising flames of the fire. So specifically what Jiva Goswami says is the Supreme and the living entity are conscious beings. But our consciousness isn't the same as the Supreme Consciousness, the Supreme Conscious Being. We're Anu and his Vibhu. We're tiny, he's great. So qualitatively, but not quantitatively the same. And we're part of, not separated from that source. But we can become covered, whereas the source is never covered. The source is the source of the covering. By the will of that source, the covering is extended, the covering is removed. Then there's also the reciprocation of the living entity that says, no, I want to be covered. I want this independence. I don't want to think of you. We have that much freedom. Dependent freedom. Well, I'm glad you put, this isn't the last question. Number 3 is, how come the soul got any desire to be separate from God? It's a long story. It's like a nightmare. Bad dream. The soul is part of the Supreme, like the spark is part of the fire. So that means whatever is in the Supreme, tiny quantity of that which is within the Supreme is within the living entity. God is omniscient. He's conscious of everything. We're conscious to some degree, tiny consciousness. God has all wealth. We have some wealth. We're tiny samples of him. So he has unlimited free will. We have tiny free will. It's intrinsic to the soul. Which means we can properly use or we can misuse that free will. You with me so far?
Yeah.
So now, what's the prompt? Because the question, the way this question goes, what's the prompt that prompted the living entity to say, I want to be separate? As if the prompt is something outside, because we're used to cause and effect. Like the sun went down, it gets a little cold, so I put on a jacket. Jacket didn't jump on my back. I, reached in my closet and got the jacket. The prompt was the cold. So I did something because of the cold. Something outside prompted something inside. It's cause and effect. This is a situation that there's no outside cause, just an inside capacity. The trouble in understanding this question, here's what Prabhupada said. The trouble in understanding this question is we want to equate ourselves with Vishnu or Krishna. Because we want to equate ourselves with Krishna, we can't understand the answer to this question. If we understood we're tiny, we're because we're tiny, it's capable, it's part of our capacity to misuse free will. Then we're looking for something cause and effect outside. But what caused us to do that? Just our limitedness, our potential to misuse free will. In other words, if you look for a good reason, you won't find a good reason, because there isn't one. There's no good reason. It's dumb, in fact. It's not a good reason. So why would we do something that's quite unreasonable and dumb? And come to a position where we're in misery and we can't get out. We thought it was going to be nice, and turned out to be not nice. We want to get out. We can't just snap our fingers and say, okay, I changed my mind. I want to go back out. It's not so easy. We've fallen out of grace, using Christian language. How do we get back into the grace of God? Well, it's a long climb. And even if you climb, you can't get out just by climbing. You can't get out by your own effort. You require mercy. But so your question is, how did it happen in the first place? What was the prompt? Well, it wasn't an external prompt. It was just a misuse of free will. We somehow or other, Yadrishchaya is the Sanskrit language, somehow or other, this misuse of free will event took place. Now, so with the question, not only comes the idea, what was the cause, and that was the effect of some other cause. So we're looking for something outside. Then you can ask, what's the cause of that? What's the cause of that? What's the cause of that? So this is the answer to this is that there isn't something outside cause, there's misuse of free will. Then another one is, well, when did that happen? And the answer is, don't think of this as, there are such things as events that are not within time. What's that? An event is not within time, because any events we know is within time. Once upon a time, the living entity was in the spiritual world. I'd like to enjoy independently of Krishna and then felt. So, the before and after, as if a chronological event or an event within time. So this is an event that's not in that same sense of time, before and after, which is really a mind bender. How do you think of something as an event that's not within time? Really no events that's within time. There was a time when we, before we were at the program, we were doing something and we came to the program. It took some time to get here, and now we're here, and then after some time we're going to scatter and disperse and go elsewhere, except for you. That's what that's for. But some people will say it helps you clean up the mess. So, to have events, you need time. Now, what's an event that's without time? Well, there are such things as ontological events that aren't chronological. They're just instant event. Like, let's take another event. Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives this example. Living entities are part and parcel of the Supreme. So, there's an event that's not within time. It's not like once upon a time Krishna was there. He was looking around and saying, "Gee, feeling a little restless here. I'd like some other living entities to be with." And boom, there's living entities. There isn't a time, Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes, do not ask the misleading question, when the living entities were created, nor when the living entities were enthralled. So the living entities are emanations from the Supreme Lord. He's the cause, and they're his part and parcel. So that's an ontological relationship, but it's not a chronological event. Similarly, so the problem comes in when we think of these things as chronological. It's not. It's ontological. The fall of a living entity is an event. It's not within time as we know it. That's puzzling. And then turn it the other way around. That is, going back to Godhead. Prabhupada has described living entity returning back to God as if no time has passed. So what's that? Well, we'll know when we get there. But this is but illusion. So what's the beginning and end of illusion? Well, it's illusory. We're actually with Krishna. We just are deluded in thinking that we're not. And we're having a bad dream. Sometimes it seems like it's going okay, and sometimes it's a bad dream. It's mysterious. What I just described is not what the impersonalists say, that it just doesn't exist. Like your home doesn't exist, your body doesn't exist, and your thoughts don't exist, and your feelings don't exist. And, when you're having a dream, there's the sense of that I exist in the dream when you're dreaming. False ego is operative when we're dreaming. But the events in the dream are illusory. And likewise, the events when we're awake, they're illusory. And then there's reality. That's the basis of the illusion. The reflection of an object exists because of the object. And the surface of reflection, in this case, is the mind. In the mind, it seems real. The pains and pleasures. The sound of the airplane passing above in the sky. So there's it's a sound, and the sound is coming, etc., etc. So it's happening. It's real. As far as temporal sense of creation and reality is concerned. Anyway, I'm going over this backwards and forwards a little bit because we're so accustomed to the illusion that it's hard to think of what's reality other than the illusion. We can't think of something other. It's like beyond our experience. And how do you think of something beyond your experience? You think of it in terms of your experience, which doesn't fit. Events that are not within time. It's wonderful contemplation. It's kind of mind expanding, but it's still not the spiritual world because you can't get to the spiritual world by expanding your mind. There's a verse in Romapada Swami that says that. So if you can make a vimana, and a craft, an aircraft that travels at the speed of the wind or the speed of the mind. Prabhupada's explanation, speed of the mind is such that I may be sitting here in New York and I'm thinking of my home in Calcutta. And just by thinking of my home in Calcutta, immediately the mind is there, takes you there. That's how fast the mind travels. And suppose you had a vimana that traveled the speed of the mind, and you travel for millions and millions and millions and millions of years. The spiritual world is still far away. There's no dimension. Mind speed won't get you there. So you can't imagine, it's mind expanding discussion can help give a sense that it's beyond my experience, but then it's still beyond your experience. You can describe in reference to your experience, it's beyond that, and it's beyond that, and it's beyond that. It's beyond. So returning to the spiritual world is beyond our experience, and falling from the spiritual world is beyond our experience, although ontologically we fell. It's hard to grasp it. Therefore, what Prabhupada writes in very nice purport in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, this Sanskrit phrase anadi, adi means beginning and anadi means with no beginning. So back in time, just keep going far enough back in time to find, the living entity was with Krishna. You can't go far enough back in time, and therefore it's an anadi event or an ontological event. And similarly, returning to Krishna is inconceivable, but the potency is there simply by connecting again with Krishna in devotion. That's what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada writes, rather than trying to understand this mysterious question, which we will not be able to do using the faculties that we have available to us, primarily the mind, it's inconceivable. The main business is get out. How did I get in the middle of this ocean? Never mind, man, take this life raft. Wait a minute, before I grab the life raft, tell me, I want to figure it out. How did I get here? We'll talk about that later. Grab the life raft. I'll pull you to safety. We will not understand in our present circumstance because the faculties that we'll be using are all limited, and this is beyond the limited. Okay? Thank you. Okay. Related is question number 4. If once this happened, this is the once upon a time chronological question that's related. So is it possible that we'll fall again? Will we go back to Golok and we'll tumble once more? Prabhupada's simple answer to that is no, you will have learned your lesson. You won't be able to go back until you've learned your lesson. Once you've learned your lesson, you won't repeat. And then the second explanation is Krishna gives his promise that we will not fall again. He upholds his promise. Then the next question is, well, if he gives his promise about you won't fall again, why did he give his promise before you fell? It's word jugglery. We're still not taking our business of getting out. But wait a minute, I want to understand what happens if I go back. It's a statement of consciousness. Prabhupada's answer is the potential is there. Because we're marginal potency. Tatastha Shakti in Sanskrit. So Tatastha Shakti means I can be influenced this way or I can be influenced that way. The classic example given in the Vedas is where river meets the riverbank. Over here on this side, that's the river. Over on that side, that's the riverbank. And then there's this line where the river meets the riverbank. And that where the line is neither the river nor the riverbank. It's something else. It's Tatastha. And we're tatasta. We're marginal. We can be influenced this way or that way. So Prabhupada's explanation is when the living entity returns to the spiritual world, they're still tatasta. The potential is still there, but they have learned their lesson. They will not misuse their free will again, and Krishna will give his protection by special arrangement, special promise. He promises he'll give his protection. It still remains a mystery because we're still in the material world. We still can't understand this otherworldly, beyond cause and effect and beyond time event. It truly requires, it's actually really helpful. It truly requires that we want to be with Krishna, and it's an indelible commitment, unconditional commitment to Krishna. Then we're eligible. And until then, it's all this, well, wait a minute, what if this and that and the other thing? That's our ineligibility. An example given in scripture is the position of the living entities, the pure souls who are in the spiritual world. Their commitment to Krishna, the commitment of love to Krishna, is totally unconditional. And Prabhupada gives the example of the gopis. You know the pastime where Krishna said he had a headache? You know that pastime? Krishna said he had a headache. Krishna doesn't have a headache. Krishna said he had a headache. And so they went to get a doctor. And the doctor couldn't find a cure to Krishna's headache. Pastime. And then Krishna said what the cure was. I need the dust from somebody's feet. Smear that dust from somebody's feet on my forehead. And many people were consulted. They said, no, that's offense. We can't put dust of our feet on Krishna's forehead. The gopis found out. Quickly, take the dust from our feet. Well, don't you understand? You go to hell for putting the dust of your feet on Krishna's. We'll go to hell a million times. Just take Krishna's headache away. Take the dust, quick. Like that. So committed to our relationship with Krishna. Anything. And then that commitment will be tested. Oh, anything, huh? What about a little tribulation? I know some tribulations that others are having and that I'm having that are pretty hard to endure. Am I going to be faithful in my relationship, my commitment in my relationship with Krishna? Then another test. What about some sense gratification? A little bit. Innocent. In moderation. A little bit. The devotee, Prabhupada said, the devotee will say, no, I only want Krishna. So we'll be tested. And when the test comes, don't complain. Because you made your commitment to Krishna. An unconditional commitment to Krishna. Here comes the test. Wait a minute, Krishna, I didn't want that test. It happens even in Goloka. Or at least in Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. Some demon. Here comes Dhanakasura, or Aristasura, or this Asura, that Asura. Wait a minute, I didn't sign up for demons. I signed up for Krishna's loving service. What do they do? Krishna! And Krishna take care of the demon. Jiva Goswami writes that in Goloka, in the spiritual world, there's no demons. But there's the bhava, or Brahma Vilas, the pastimes of seeming error, where the residents of Vrindavan think, Aristasura is coming. There's a description. One person nobody has ever seen before, he comes running through Vrindavan and says, look out, here comes Aristasura. Then he suddenly disappears. Everyone's in panic. Aristasura is coming. Krishna. So there's this bhav of danger or difficulty. And here we face, looks to us like real danger and difficulty. And then how are we going to respond to that danger and difficulty? Depends where your shelter is. You can put up your fist and get ready to fight, or get on your running shoes and start to run, or however you're going to respond to that danger or difficulty. Or you can take shelter of Krishna. That's our test. That's our opportunity to be very secure in our trust and our love and our relationship with Krishna. And then comes the final test, the moment of death, when everything is going to be taken away and we can panic, or we can fully trust Krishna, be in Krishna's arms, and Krishna's carrying us, or Krishna's associates carrying us to Goloka. Depends on what faith and trust in your relationship with Krishna you've established. We get tested. It's just to help us get ready for that final journey into the spiritual world, to be with Krishna eternally. You have to be with Krishna here to be with Krishna eternally. And it's a free will choice that one extra ingredient is required, and that is the willingness and eagerness to receive the mercy from those who distribute Krishna's mercy. Because it's not a totally independent, because we're not totally independent, choice. We must make such a choice. We must also receive some mercy. We must be the recipients of the mercy of Krishna's devotees, because that's how Krishna gives us mercy, through his devotees. Okay. Then question 5 is the last one. The nature of the soul is Sat Chit Ananda. Is that nature dependent on Krishna? By that question, do you mean, could Krishna take away our Sat Chit Ananda nature? Is that what your question implies? We are dependent, and our Sat Chit Ananda-ness is dependent. But it's eternal. The living entity is co-eternal. As Krishna is eternal, the living entity doesn't come. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, living entities have never come into being. They're not coming into being, and nor in the future will any come into being. There's an uncountable number of living entities that are eternally Krishna's part and parcel. So that Sat and Chit and Ananda quality of the soul is eternal. But the capacity to be each of those is dependent. Everything is dependent upon the Supreme Independent. It's not that he'll take it away. I've had it with you. I'm just going to squish you, and you go out of existence, and you're no longer Satchit Ananda. So there. No, not that kind of dependent on Krishna's volition. Does that address your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. You have some more questions you want to ask? Seems like you like to ask questions. Good enough for now?
Yeah.
Okay. So anybody else would like to, anything at all you'd like, this is a free-for-all evening. Set in place. Any topics you'd like to have discussed? Yes.
Maharaj, you talked about chronological.
And ontological.
Yes. So the Srimad Bhagavatam, when we read, is it correct understanding that it's not in chronological order?
Oh, it's not in chronological.
And what is the reason for that, Maharaj?
The reason is Vyasadeva is not bound by that kind of presentation. Rather, in a profound way, he wants to do one thing. He wants to do what his spiritual master asked him to do, which is to glorify Krishna. And to glorify Krishna, it's not necessary to do that by reciting events in chronological order. Now, for example, the 10th canto, it's in chronological order, the pastimes of Krishna from before his birth and then his birth and so forth. It's a chronological description of Krishna's life, spilling over into the beginning parts of the 11th canto, the departure of the other dynasty and so on. And before that, the 9th canto is a lot of the lists of dynasties of kings, both in the Surya and the Chandra dynasty. So those are chronological in their listing. But there's sections that are not. Because the aim of the composition is to glorify the personality of Godhead in his various features. So for that purpose, the chronology isn't given the same importance. Yes?
You know, the question came up in the Bhakti Vriksha, like Shivaratri just went by. So they were asking, we celebrate the appearance day and disappearance day of Vaishnava Acharyas. Why don't we celebrate the Shivaratri? Why don't we celebrate not appearance day, but Shivaratri festival for Lord Shiva? We say always, please, Vaishnavana Meta Shambhu.
There's the cow hat again. The cow hat and the girl wearing the cow hat came to the Bhagavatam class this morning. Very charming. Yeah, she's pointing to the cow. Okay. So it's not that we don't. Yeah, rather, rather, the way in which we do two things. The way in which we do honor Shivaratri is as Vaishnavas, we honor Shivaratri, respecting Lord Shiva as a great Vaishnava. And I haven't heard Prabhupada say this, but my intuition says that when we want to worship Lord Shiva as a Vaishnava, those that have a different experience than Vaishnavas appreciating Lord Shiva, they want to worship Lord Shiva in a different way. And they, get pretty vocal about it. That's been my experience. You don't do it that way, you do it this way, and etc. And it gets to be contentious and uncomfortable. Then you have to have, like a Nistagosti and a peace talk, and this is how we worship Lord Shiva or respect Lord Shiva on Shivaratri. Then it becomes peaceful a little while, and then it gets loud again. That's the second one is more of intuition than it is anything I heard Prabhupada say. And I from experience in different centers, they make more of a they pay more attention to appearance day of our acharyas or Vishnu tattva forms and so forth than other centers. Some do it this way, so it's not uniform all over the world of ISKCON. So there may be some centers that I'm not so familiar with that place greater emphasis on Shivaratri, and they have already gone through that negotiation thing about how to do it, and it just becomes standard, and then new people come in and it's already standard. They want to turn over the apple cart, but it's already standard, so they're not going to change the apple cart. This is how we honor Lord Shiva in our center on Shivaratri. I imagine there's places in South India that's like that. In particular, I'm saying South India because there's lots of prominent Shiva temples, which Lord Chaitanya visited, which when we went to South India, we visited. Because Lord Chaitanya visited, and we honored Lord Shiva in a way that Lord Chaitanya honored Lord Shiva. It's not something in my years of Krishna consciousness in the West that there was such prominence given to visiting temples of Lord Shiva. That how we are to do that is different as Vaishnavas, honoring him as a great Vaishnava, not a rival or competitor Lord, one amongst many or something like that. This may be a sensitive topic. I hope I'm not stepping on anybody's toes in speaking this one. Any other questions?
All right, sure.
When we see envy or jealousy in this world, so the way I see it is beneath that there is a need for acknowledgement or to be seen, which causes the envy or jealousy within in this material world. And I'm trying to understand how do I understand this in terms of the spiritual, the envy towards Krishna.
I'm trying to understand your question that you'd like to understand. What I have heard from Srila Prabhupada is everything that is here has its spiritual counterpart except for envy. Anger and so forth. Hanuman becoming angry, it has a spiritual place. That in its pure form, not the contaminated form, doesn't mean like, oh, there's anger in the spiritual world, so I can go bashing people with anger. It's okay because I'm being spiritual. Not like that. But it is unadulterated form. There, whatever exists here, the unadulterated form is there, except envy. This has no place in the spiritual world.
No, I didn't mean to say it has a place, but in terms of envy towards Krishna, why does it come into play?
Okay, well that's this, that's this seems to me it's the same type of question as what's the prompt? What's the cause that brings about that effect. Using that language, but that's the dynamic of the question. And my understanding is, my answer is, it's of the soul. It's not something outside. And that's puzzling. Because then you go back to well, then why? Well, it's just misuse of free will. That's why. Well, why would the soul misuse their free will? Because again, it's looking for something outside. What's the problem? The cause of that effect. There isn't a cause of that effect. It's just plain and simple misuse of free will. Well, from where does that misuse of free will arise? It arises from the potential of the soul to do so. But why? Why? There's no good reason. Yeah, there's no good reason. Quite unreasonable. Well, how did unreasonable misuse of free will arise in a place that's, transcendental? It's the same question. Just using different language to ask the same question. Misuse of free will. The potential is there. This question can go on for hours. There's books written about it, and people that say this and people that say that. Let's see if there's some other questions. Oh, okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I've heard that Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that the jiva has been here since time immemorial.
Yeah.
So how can I understand
Well,
that?
there's a different way. There are two different ways of considering or contemplating or defining since time immemorial. Since time immemorial can mean in an absolute sense, or since time immemorial can mean so far back in time you cannot find the beginning. That's time immemorial. And Prabhupada's use of the language is more in terms of the second one.
There is soul in the body. It's attached to the body in some way. When the soul lands into the body, I mean, a man gives the life, and the life grows in a woman's body.
Yeah.
And at what point of time soul gets into that creation?
At the moment of conception.
Yeah.
That's the answer. The soul is carried, transferred or transmitted within the secretion from the male. The soul is present there, and the soul then enters into the body of the female. And if there's fertilization, then the soul is the one that is already present. Now, I'm forgetting the list. There's different ways in which birth takes place. One is by eggs, and the other is by perspiration, and the other is by fermentation, by seed. So in each one of those, there's a circumstance that's conducive for life, and the soul enters. Let's just take this example of someone that dies, and they're not ready to go back to Godhead, so they're going to take birth in another womb. So they're transferred to the semen of the male, and then that's impregnated into the female, and there may be conception. Soul is present from the moment of conception, not some point later in the gestation period. The soul comes.
So soul or life starts from the men body, and men have so many lives generated every day.
How many spirit souls are there in your body?
It gets generated every day.
No, besides the soul that's you, that's within the heart, and is the principal sense of this is me. How many other souls are present within the body? Zillions and zillions. How many microbes and tiny living entities and zillions. The body is the host for zillions. They have their own bodies within that body, but within that body there's so many living entities. That's within each body. But amongst those so many bodies, there's one that's me. And I'm thinking me. And those other ones are thinking, no, it's me. But their consciousness is spread through their microbial germ body. They're not conscious of all the different things that you're conscious of. You know, you got a pain in your toe and your head itches and everything in between. That's us. And that's our, it's our false ego that thinks this is me. That's the soul that's us. And then there's so many others. From whence does the soul come when the male impregnates the female? Well, it's not necessarily one of those zillions that are already in the body. Just there's a suitable conveyance. I've never heard the technology described of how that happens. Not necessarily, but I'm saying it's not necessarily one of the zillions that's already within your body. And one says, "Okay, I'm ready to go. Let's go." Just a suitable atmosphere is created, or a condition is made suitable for a soul to potentially at least take his next body through the act of conception. Let's say there's contraception. There's so many souls that they're blocked from having the next body. There's souls that are blocked from taking their next body. And somebody that does the contraception program, they're violating that living entity's opportunity to enter and get another body. And it's supposing you rented an apartment, you made an application for a vacant apartment. You met with the owner of the apartment and the landlord, and you showed your credentials and whatever, et cetera, ability. You sign a contract, and they give you the keys. The place will be clean. You can go there. March 16th. You go on March 16th, and the thing is boarded up. You signed a contract with the guy, and there's the thing is boarded up. You take the guy to court. He's in violation of the law. That's what contraception is. It's unlawful by higher order of things. Whatever the method of contraception is, you can do it this way or that way or the other way, or barring the living entity from his rightful karmic opportunity or claim to take another body. So where does that soul go that was supposed to enter? Got to hang out for whatever period of time until some other arrangement was made. And whoever's responsible with that has a karmic burden. Taken to karma court. He's guilty. So the soul is present even before conception takes place. The soul is present at the moment of conception, and then the housing, the body for the soul, the next vehicle for the soul to spend some period of time during a lifetime, however long or short that may be, That's an arrangement made by nature. Then his karma and his guna, he will be fulfilled by nature's arrangement. And according to the species, and according to the particulars of the mother and father, and so forth. Does that answer your question?
One more.
Yeah, one more?
I have 100 questions, but at least now I start reading this one.
That's what we're here for.
Soul is a spiritual entity. Mind, intelligence,
And false
everything is
ego.
material intelligence. Material entities. Can this talk to each other?
I've never heard that question. What language do they speak? Well, let me think about this. Sariputta, one of the classic questions in science is what they call the mind-body problem. Mechanistic science says, I'm going to address something first before I address your question. It's just going to help me get my thought process going. Mechanistic science says all there is one thing, matter, and the laws that govern matter, and that's all there is. So this thing is called mind. It's silly. All there is matter, and laws that govern matter, and different combinations of matter, according to laws that govern matter, get what you foolish people call mind. There's only one thing. Just keep saying it enough times, and and control what goes into textbooks, and who can teach what. And then you only have one thing: matter and the laws that govern matter. So Descartes came along and said, no, there's another thing called mind. And he posited, and it was not so popular, and it kind of faded and went in the direction of, no, there's only matter and the laws governing matter. Now that in modern science, there's this other thing that says, well, there's consciousness. It's not matter. Without going into the whole discussion. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, and so forth. You familiar? A little bit? No. Okay. There's this whole school evolving in modern science that says, well, there's this other thing. It's mind. There were a husband and wife couple that were tenured professors at Princeton University in the statistics department that were dabbling in parapsychology. Parapsychology says mind can determine outcomes of events, or at least influence outcomes of events. Parapsychology. So there is another entity, the mind, that's different than matter. It can determine or influence events that should be only under the laws of matter, and then there's, with predictable outcomes, and the mind can influence those outcomes. Parapsychology. So that's the mind influencing matter, which modern science commonly says no. That's ridiculous. Rubbish. Now, can the soul have dialogue with the mind or the intelligent material entities of mind and intelligence? Well, there's the material condition of life, and there's the spiritual condition of life. And in the spiritual condition of life, there is functions of a spiritual mind, thinking, feeling, willing, and they're all Krishna-centered. And then the faculty of discernment, of discrimination between one thing and another thing, the faculty of spiritual intelligence. Now, the soul directly connects with spiritual mind and spiritual intelligence. And for that matter, spiritual ego, the sense of self. There's a direct connection. And the others are like coverings. Like put a glove on your hand and you wiggle your fingers and the glove wiggles. Because the fingers of the hand are moving. So the covering moves. I can't think of anything scriptural, just the other than the subtle body, mind and intelligence, they're coverings of the true self, the soul, and they can only move if animated by the soul. And similarly, the gross body is animated by the subtle body, which is animated by the soul. You follow what I just said?
That's a bit lost.
Okay. When a body dies, what it means is the soul leaves. So the elements of the body are there, but it doesn't move. It has to be animated or made to appear to be alive, although it's just dead matter. It appears to be alive because the presence of the soul. And the presence of the soul is accompanied with the subtle body, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Right? There's gross body and there's a subtle body and there's the soul. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7. So the subtle body is made up of three: mind, intelligence, false ego. When the body is no longer habitable, the subtle body carries the soul to the next situation. That was your question. Was the soul present? At the time of conception, the soul is present. The soul is transferred to the semen of the male and into the womb of the female, and so on. So the subtle body has different functions. The functions of the mind include, among them, thinking, feeling, willing. So the body moves, or actions happen, preceded by those three. We think, feel, will, and then we do. Then the body moves. And it can happen really fast, just like I'm moving my hand. There's an activity of the body. But preceding that activity of the body, it's animated by the subtle functions, the subtle body, which is animated by the soul. So that's in the conditioned state, not in the perfected state, just conditioned soul. So there's some connection. There is some connection between the soul and the other coverings, the subtle coverings, which then animate the gross covering. Your question was, can they talk to one another? Well, there's certainly transmission of volition. I want my arm to move. I can't do it independently. I could have the desire, if my capacity to move my arm, if is taken away by the demigods, that I can will my arm to move all I want, it's not going to move. So we're dependent upon the sanction of others. But you're just trying to hone in on this question: is there conversation? Can they talk to one another? It's a subtle volition, and that's transmitted somehow. I don't know what that somehow is. I don't know what the language is of communicating from the soul. I want to move my arm. There's some kind of signal is sent, some message of free will message is sent. And somehow the capacity to know, okay, you want the arm to move, so now the arm moves. So some kind of just taking it back to the simple question you asked, is there communication? Some kind of communication. I was expecting, I took, I had come to this human form of life and I was expecting happiness. And I didn't get the happiness I was expecting. So that's, on the soul level, it's also going to be registered in the mind and the intelligence. Can the intelligence communicate, hey, so can you just change your free will direction, please? It's not fun over here. Some signals,
Maybe the consciousness is the way.
Well, consciousness is of the soul. The soul is conscious and consciousness, which means, here's a nice example, just like fire has light, but it also has the capacity to illumine other things. Similarly, the soul is conscious and consciousness, the consciousness spreads throughout the body. And it's detected, consciousness is detected through the sensation, let's say, I can feel, but then it registers with the mind. Very complicated machine. But yes, consciousness is the basis of it, but what's your question specifically, is there dialogue, is there communication between the two? That was your question.
Like a mind wants to say that somebody, like I want to kill somebody or I want to hit somebody. Mind will say that. Intelligence will say that, hey, he cannot do that.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, it's not good. So intelligence will suggest mind that, hey, this is not good.
Well, that's between the mind and the intelligence. This is between the mind intelligence and then the soul. The soul is conscious and consciousness. So is there dialogue between the material mind and the material intelligence and the soul?
Maharaj, it adds to the discussion, but I have heard in lectures, but I haven't read this, but it is said that because we are purely spiritual, we have nothing to do with matter. So we actually don't interact with matter, but it's the super soul that's present that helps the communication between the soul and the outside matter. But that's, I've heard in lectures, I haven't read.
Well, just to add to the discussion, super soul certainly gives direction to the movements of matter, including the mind, including the intelligence, and all other parts of the material creation. That doesn't, making that statement doesn't nullify, can there be any signal passing back and forth? I mean, super soul can certainly give us a signal, but is super soul barred from getting a signal through the material intelligence and the material mind? I don't know if you could say that. We're not in control of those things. Super soul is. But I would think super soul can give a signal that says, through whatever methods he wants. I don't know the answer to your question. Some signal passing must be going on, but how to describe it or understand it, I'm at a loss. Yes.
From this discussion, you mentioned Maharaj, soul is the animator to animate the subtle body and it animates the gross body. So if soul is independent, how it would be conditioned?
Why not?
Because soul is animating the body, subtle body. It is the active force. How it will be conditioned?
Why not?
Because this is the one which is causing to animate everything else.
Well, causing not independently.
It depends.
The soul is dependent.
It depends only on the super soul.
Like, yeah. let's say you're not a devotee, and you have an exam coming, and you really want to get an A in your exam. So you study and study and study, and you sit down for the exam, and your mind freezes. You overstudy. Just your mind freezes. So the soul is the animating factor, but somehow we got conditioned because we're not the independent animator. We're a dependent animator.
It depends only on super.
Well, everything depends on Krishna, sure. Sure.
Why?
But we're not, we are dependent. We're not, we're conditioned because we're dependent. Dependent upon the arrangement that Super Soul makes. Then somebody else doesn't study at all and they get all the answers. And they're both are animator souls. So that's how we become conditioned. Conditioned by our actions in this life and the previous life. And the modes of nature by which we have conducted ourselves. We made some choices.
That's it. That's what exactly my question. If it is conditioned by Supreme Soul, that is correct conditioning. If it is conditioned by our mind, intelligence, and false ego,
Mind, intelligence, and false ego are under the direction of the Supreme Lord. That's how. See? He's confirming.
So subtle body is also kind of animating this. So
Well, stay tuned for Tattva Sandarbha. There's a lengthy discussion by Jiva Goswami exactly on this topic, and it's very complicated. And it goes into the Carabhajana Muni's discussion with Maharaj Nimi in the 11th canto of Bhagavatam. He goes through several verses where this exact topic is discussed. Huh? I have to look. I don't recall offhand.
Maharaj, when the soul goes to Golok Vrindavana, there is no mind. False ego is not going with that.
There's no material mind, but there's a spiritual mind.
Spiritual mind.
There's no material intelligence, there's spiritual intelligence.
So,
it's the hand without the glove. It's still wiggling, but there's no glove, there's no covering.
The similar way, there is a spiritual sattva, spiritual rajogun, and spiritual tamogun. All three are there or no?
No. Where'd you get that one?
Is that right or wrong?
Wrong. It's the internal potency. The modes of nature are absent. Yeah.
From yesterday's discussion, I was wondering how to teach children the principle of sacrifice without emotional manipulation.
Without?
Emotional manipulation.
Ask your son, he'll tell you. Out of love. Meaning, how do you teach anything out of love? You show for example, that here's some potential choices. Here's a life without sacrifice. Here's a life with sacrifice. And nature's arrangement or God's arrangement is when there is sacrifice, this is how life flows. This is how the material energy moves. This is how other living entities feel and experience, how you will feel and experience, how Krishna sees and reciprocates. That's what this one is like. And then here's the other one, where there isn't sacrifice. So now, just being neutral and stepping back, how does it look to you? And then so the soul can say, oh, I think I want that one. Then you ask again, well, why would you want that one? And it could be, well, it sounded like you wanted that one instead of this one. We don't know. Don't give which would be the more suitable response and why.
I have,
Huh?
I have a.
I'm looking at Prahlad and see
Okay.
if he's ready to say, yeah, I like that. That's not manipulation. It's not coercion.
Mhm.
It's education done in a loving way. Okay, you have a second question.
Yeah, it's from today's class. In trying circumstances, when sometimes it feels like that it's better not to intervene in the situation and the Krishna factor work. And sometimes you feel that you need to intervene. How do you know in which circumstance whether intervention is required or not required?
Well, it requires, to make that discrimination requires intelligence. And intelligence is something that's supplied by Supersoul, especially with, subtle things, whether Krishna's intervention is the essential. So experience can tell you. Experience is learning the hard way. Sometimes you make mistakes, you intervene when you shouldn't, or you don't intervene when you should, and you learn the hard way. You learn from the example of qualified persons, but even different qualified persons will conduct themselves in different ways, given similar sets of circumstance. And that spiritual intelligence, the discerning capacity, whether to do this or that, that's the endowment or the gift that Krishna gives to one who wants to please him. So I don't think there's a rule that says, intervene in this circumstance and don't intervene in that circumstance. Rather, it's more relationship with Krishna based, from my understanding of things. I was thinking of our founder Acharya. Sometimes he would say something and sometimes he would not say something. And what was the factor involved was super soul, instructing and guiding them. Say something, say this. And so we can't imitate. We can see from his example, or other pure devotees' example. A similar, different but similar question came. We were discussing Grandfather Bhishma disclosing to Yudhisthira how he could be killed. And there was a question that said, should we do like that? Or should we act from another platform that says, preserve the body, don't tell people how they can kill you, or how they can bring harm and damage to you. So, how should we decide, whether I should act or not act, or disclose or not disclose, whether I should just allow things in Krishna's hand, just tell them, well, go chant Hare Krishna, become Krishna conscious, and you'll know everything you need to know. Or disclose something that somebody may want to know. Grandfather Bhishma was on another platform altogether. And he was going with the will of Krishna, everything that he did. And we're not in that position, so we need to be more in that position to have the answer to your question. In the life of Ramanujacharya, there was a threat to his life, and he was advised, don't go to the king. I'll go in your behalf. There's a threat for your life. Go to a safe place. That's why he did that. Sanatana Goswami gave advice to Lord Chaitanya, don't go to Vrindavan with thousands of people. Go alone or with one person only. But who's going to give advice to the personality of Godhead? Should you do something or not? The capacity for that finer discrimination is a fact of Krishna consciousness and good experience. Super soul. Go ahead.
Actually, I have 3 questions, but I think they may all be related. So, can I ask them all at once?
Sure.
These are questions from our Bhakti Rickshaw. So, one question was, there are certain feelings that come up when we start a family. So, how do you deal with these feelings?
I don't know. Ask somebody that has. Next question.
Another question was, right now we are on a mix-up platform, and so we have certain desires which are not Krishna conscious, and when we do that, we have some guilt associated with it. So, what would you advise to such a situation?
There's a very wonderful advice in Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, let's go to the third question. We'll come back, circle back to that one.
Oh.
That's the third question already?
No, that was the second one.
Okay.
I
don't think those two are related.
Oh, okay.
Question 1 and question 2. Okay.
The third question is, I've heard in one of the lectures that you give, Lecture Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he advises that it's better to be in the mode of passion than mode of ignorance. And I have read this long time back in Back to Godhead magazine by Srila Prabhupada also. So I want to confirm that statement with you.
It's news to me.
Okay.
I mean, yes, the mode of passion is an elevated state above somebody that's zonked out. But it's, that's not preferable. Preferable is mode of goodness. I'd like to see the context of the statement before saying too much more than that.
Okay.
So there's if you remind me, make a little note on your little device there. Remind me to send you the quote, and I'll send you the quote that I'm just now going to paraphrase. It's 11th Canto Bhagavatam from Uddhava Gita, and Krishna speaking to Uddhava, saying, a devotee in that situation you described, they understand that acting on the material platform is a source of misery. They understand that. And they also understand that they have material desires that will implicate them in misery if they act on them. So what to do? So such a devotee continues in the realm of bhakti, acknowledging that these other desires that are lingering, they're going to come out because they're there. And so I'll accept that that's going to happen, and I go on faithfully with the process of bhakti, with the hope or the faith that bhakti will cleanse my heart of these desires. Now, it's not like, okay, now I have a license to do whatever I want. Rather, the devotee wants to become free from lower nature, lower quality. And some of those lower quality desires, I just put aside. I don't act on them. But there may be others that just, they're very strong or very persistent or something. And so I'll acknowledge that they're there, and I'll accept the responsibility for those desires and the misery that's going to come from acting on those desires, but not move from the position of faith in the process of bhakti, or just be, pounded by guilt because those desires are there. So the main focus goes to faith in the process of bhakti to elevate. It should not be sitting on the strength of chanting, thinking, well, I'll have to do my bhakti and then I won't be responsible for the sins that are born of this lower nature. I accept that I'm going to get reaction for this lower nature desire. I'll take responsibility for that. Yeah.
Well, how do I take full shelter of Krishna?
Well, he has big feet. Just grab a hold of those feet. Krishna, please give me your shelter. Full shelter means nothing else. So, just like this question, there's something else. So if you're taking full shelter, requires letting go of those something else things. And generally people are attached to at least our favorite ones of the something else ones. And so then you have to qualify yourself for full shelter. And qualifying oneself for full shelter is taking the strength that comes from bhakti, and with that strength that comes from bhakti, uprooting, not just not acting on, but uprooting the very desire self. We can't do that. Bhakti can do that. Relying upon the power of bhakti to uproot those other than shelter of Krishna desires. That's how we can come to full shelter. Through the bhakti process faithfully performed. And one of the best ways to get to that position is strength beyond your own strength, that is sadhusanga, association with those that have that strength, close association with sadhu. Then one can overcome those things.
I don't have one.
Mm.
You talked about receiving blessings from devotees.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more?
How do you get that? The association of the bhakti that the other devotees are carrying. Which, can you clarify what your question is? Are you asking how do I get devotee association, or how do I get the bhakti that devotees are carrying?
How do I get the mercy of
By serving them. Devotees are naturally merciful. Just serving them. Vaishnava Seva, how you get the mercy of the Vaishnavas. And Vaishnava Seva doesn't just It can mean some physical seva, meaning, when it's time for prasadam serving, I'll go and volunteer and serve the prasadam. I'll do some Vaishnava seva by serving prasadam. That's one kind. Or some other kinds of, physical, practical activity. But another is through the process of hearing, and then of those things that I hear, remembering the Vaishnava from whom I have heard, I go into the laboratory of my life and I apply that thing that I've heard. That's Vaishnava Seva too. Then you get mercy. Because within the instruction is mercy. So I could serve out prasadam, but not, while at the same time not hearing nicely and applying the things that I've heard. And mercy is going to come into my life a little slower. You want to enrich it or make it go more strongly and swiftly. Hear it very carefully. And then while remembering the person from whom, the merciful Vaishnava from whom you've heard, you're acting in that relationship, you apply that thing, that message. So now the relationship becomes strength, and then all kinds of realizations come because when you act in knowledge, some realization comes, and you attribute the realization to the instruction that came from the person. So the relationship with the person is strengthened. Then you want to go back to that person and hear something further. Then go, take that something that you've heard, remembering the person you heard from, and apply it. Then you get more mercy. You get further realization. Now the light goes on, the darkness is dissipated. And the more there's light, the more you feel that enthusiasm. Now that I have this mercy, let me go further. The next step. Continue to act. The emphasis I'm making here is continue to act in relationship, not just apply instructions. The applying instructions behavior can be a material consciousness behavior. I'm going to go do it. I'm the doer. Consciousness. As opposed to acting in relationship with Krishna and Krishna's representatives consciousness. It's a whole other thing. That's bhakti. It's in the relationship element. Cultivating my relationship with Krishna through the relationship with his merciful representatives. This is our last question.
Yeah, I understand that I am not fallen soul, but how do we explain the same thing with the acharyas, the appearance of acharyas or the few devotees? Can you explain further on this?
I don't understand your question. What about it, our great acharyas?
I understand that
I got the first part. What's the acharya part?
So how do we explain that? Because they have also appeared in this material world, and they were also living like us as a human being. And what is the difference me and the other soul, from the soul?
Well, there's two different ways of looking at it. One is a soul that became perfected, and another way is the soul that perfected and descended out of their mercy, and they're showing by their example how souls that are in fact conditioned should behave. There's two ways of looking at it.
So is there like for me also to get, do I need to be a pure, is there a gradation of each soul to get to be a pure devotee soul and then only attain Krishna's feet?
Do you understand the question?
No.
You have us bewildered by your question.
Sorry. So my question is, so I'm a spirit soul.
Yeah.
And there are other few devotees who are out there. And also
Shelter, yeah.
are mercy. So do I need to get into that?
Get into what?
As a devotee, then only I can be.
No, you can get Krishna's mercy. You can get Krishna's mercy. And getting Krishna's mercy and more in mercy and more mercy and gradually become filled with Krishna's mercy, then you also become pure devotee. But you can get Krishna's mercy at any stage. The fellow on the street can get Krishna's mercy. And you can get Krishna's mercy and continue getting Krishna's mercy and become filled with Krishna's mercy and want nothing else but that. That's pure devotion. We're not there yet. We can cultivate that by effort that we make and by good association and receiving that good association. And like this other question, through the instructions, carrying them out. Okay. Thank you all very much.
Can I have a group picture with you?
Can we do a what?
Group picture.
Here we are. We're a group. Stand up here and take a picture. You want to stand against a wall? We're just sitting on the floor. There's your camera. Get out your camera. Just no, like this guy here. Just do your scan. You got a group picture. Okay. Thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada.
Jai. His Holiness Romapada Swami Maharaja. Jai.
I'm supposed to give out some prasadam.
Your dream is coming
Become part of my dream.
Your desire. Next door.
क्या है ये सड़क के रखो उसके बाद देखते that is my वही इसके लिए हड़प के रखो 15 साल पहले अपॉर्चुनिटी आया we didn't take advantage of it तो अभी हड़प के रखो
This part he's saying we need to be a reasonable price. Yes,
you think what they are asking is stupid सुनील माधव प्रभु को पूछेंगे पता चलेगा
वो तो बोलेगा 500 में ले I have follow up to your question.
Sorry, क्या था follow up?
It's offers This is called mercy. When you do completely a person I'm quite content to know the person is humble individual. Yeah. Person be what can you say what?
No, I think 50% I couldn't, I had to reciprocate with all the support you gave me last year.
If I tell you, you cannot come here, but Maharaj here, then very happy.
Even when Maharaj is not there, you'll call me, I'll come.
All right.
Thank you.
Not go on to pick.
Yes, of course, in your house, I will go taking prasadam. So because you're an individual soul, I'll give you an example of that's I learned in my relationship with my father-in-law. I had a fantastic relationship with him. But horrible healthy relationship.
Then when he came to know about me and my husband, the relationship got spoiled. Then I got married, it was very sad. Like his dog, हर रोज मुझे सुबह बस स्टॉप पे छोड़ेंगे 5 मिनट का वॉक है बट कार में छोड़ेंगे 11:30 बजे मैं स्कूल से आने लाइक आई वाज शांत सकी शांत सकी तो वो मेरे लिए हर रोज बादाम मिल्क बना शेक ड्रिंक करते हैं ऑफिस ऑफिस आफ्टर रिटायरमेंट वाज हेल्पिंग सम अदर